Hi, I'd like to talk to you today about reading with children. Now, I have 3 children of my own and I've spent the last 20 years as a primary school teacher. I've now left teaching and I'm working as a writer, and as a part of that I am passionate about reading and about engaging children in reading. So I thought I'd talk to you today about reading with children because it's something that we're expected to do with our kids from a very early age, and it strikes me that actually nobody really gives us any idea of what that should be, what that should look like, how we can best engage our children with reading so that they become readers for life. Because let's be honest, reading is the key to all learning. So when our children first bring books home from school, they tend to look a little bit like this. So lots of pictures, not so many words. It's really important at this stage that the children are taking ownership. So the first thing I would say is, when you're reading with your children, they are the ones that hold the book, so they have ownership over that book. And a really good place to start from is talking about the pictures. These books are all about visual literacy, so it's getting the idea of the story starting at the front and finishing at the end, and things like the blurb on the back giving you some idea about the book. But have a look at the pictures with them. Talk about, if we even read the words, talk about what can we see in the picture. Do we know what these characters are called? Perhaps as you're talking about them, if you can see the character's name, that you point it out while you're talking about it. All those sort of things will help your child to be able to decode those words and enjoy the story. Okay? Then we move on. As children get a little bit more confident, they start bringing home reading books that have a little bit more information in them, a bit more in the way of writing. So these stories, it's really important that we start thinking about things like punctuation. And this is where we start to enable our children to be more expressive readers. It's really useful if we can be modelling that. So we're perhaps looking at this and thinking about, how would we say this sentence because it's got a question mark at the end. As well as working on a reading book from school like this is a crucial stage for engaging children with more complex stories than they can actually read. So having a book that you can read to them before they go to bed or of an evening sometime is also really, really important. I can't stress that enough. If children can access stories that are more difficult than they can read, then they are a long way towards being the kind of people who will want to pick up a story and want to find out what happens at the end. So that's really, really important. Okay? And then as we progress further up to the school, the books start getting a little bit more wordy. Now this is a really tricky stage because we've emerged from the picture books. We've come into a book that's much more about the text. It's still illustrated, but there's an awful lot of text on there for a young reader. I think too often it's treated as a test, that we give books to children and we expect them by decoding to work out what every single word means. And quite often, for someone who's perhaps a little bit shaky on sounding words out, this is where it all starts to fall apart, because this can be quite intimidating. There's an awful lot of words on these pages. So one suggestion for a technique that can be really helpful is, before you sit down to actually get your child to read, that you look at the book together again, just like you did with the picture books. You talk about what's happening in the story. If it's the first time you've picked it up, have a look at the blurb on the back, what might be about to happen, what's it about, who's in the story. Is it like anything else that you've ever read? Decide on which part of the book you're going to be reading. If you're starting at the beginning and you're going to read a few pages, then perhaps have a look at those pages together first. A really useful technique is for you to pre-read the pages to your child. Now I know that might sound like it's cheating, but again, it's not a test. This is all about enabling your child to be able to read words and to understand the flow of the story, not just by mechanically decoding every single word on the page. So I would start by using your finger to read down the text. When you get to a word that's particularly tricky or that they might not have met before, like for example on this page the word heroic, then maybe you underline that word with your finger, you pause there for a second, give your child a sense of, that might be a tricky word that I might have to read, so I'm going to make note of that. You might even want to talk about what it means because it might be unfamiliar to them. So once you've pre-read that with your child, you then go back and you say, okay, now it's your turn. You have a go at reading it. The advantage of doing it this way is that the child has already got a sense of what the story means. It's very hard work if reading to you is literally decoding every single word, letter by letter, to try and work it out. Mechanically, the child might be able to read every single word on the page, but in terms of understanding it and enjoying it as a book, sometimes you need someone to give you a sense of what those words mean in a bigger context first. Okay, so that's one really useful technique. Even when your children get to the stage where they're reading books like this is the Beast Quest series, my son in particular enjoyed these at around the year 3 stage. Again, it's really important that children don't lose the overall sense of where the book is going. So, and even now, my child is in year 5 at school, he's reading much longer books than this. We like to take it in turns to read a couple of pages each. That has the advantage of giving him a chance to understand the context of the story and where the story's going. Here's some of the more difficult names, difficult words in there, but then it also gives him a chance to read back to me. So I'm modelling intonation, punctuation, pauses, thinking about how I can make it more dramatic so he's interested in the story. It also makes my reading, I've got to keep my reading up to scratch in order to engage him with his reading, and then give him a chance to read a couple of pages to me so that we're sharing the story together. I think it is tempting, once they're able to read books like this, just to leave them to it. Some children will devour books and they'll be able to sit down and read it for themselves, no problem, and they'll want to do that night after night. But a lot of children, a lot of boys in particular, if I'm honest, will struggle to do that, and they'll lose interest when it gets to the point where they've just got pages of text. So spending a little bit of time, even just 10 minutes a night, where you're sharing the book and you're helping each other to read it, can be really valuable. I hope that's been of use to you, and I'm going to plan to do another couple of videos about other aspects of reading to engage children that might otherwise struggle. Thanks very much for watching.